All right. Welcome, everyone. We still got people coming in. Want to thank you for joining us today on another KeyShot webinar. We are very honored to have our very special guest, Tim Feher, here presenting. He's the Director of Creative Services over at KeyShot Studios. If you're not familiar with Tim, he's an automotive industry veteran and a longtime KeyShot user, nay, KeyShot master. He is the man, so you're definitely in for a treat today. If you're not familiar with KeyShot Studios, you want to check that out. It's the premier resource for firms and people who need to outsource their existing visualization needs. You can learn more about that over at KeyShotStudios.com. Check that out. And with that, Mr. Tim Feher, take it away, sir.
Thanks, Josh. I just want to thank everyone for taking their time today and joining us on this webinar. I'm going to go over a few different things when it comes to automotive, the key parts of creating a good image. One is a lot of people ask questions on the tire materials, how to create tire materials, metals, and the paint. I'm going to go right into this right away. Right into it. So if you need any other support, I would go to KeyShot's YouTube channel or on their site to look at some tips and tricks to learn a little bit more. But without further ado, I'm going to get going here. So the first thing we're going to do is work on tires and how do I set up tires for rendering purposes. This is what I have right now. This is a tire that's all kind of done up. This is what we're going to work on. The sidewall that I have here is just a generic sidewall, has nice big lettering and big serrations because I really want everyone to see what's going on here. So first things first, before I start doing my tires, I have to get a tire map. Usually get your tire maps from the OEM or a vendor. So I'm going to go into Photoshop here real quick and show you how this works. When I get a tire map, sometimes it's just a flat map like this, or sometimes it's a AI file with all vector lines. I love the vector versions because I can go in there and pull all these lines and make this map as big as possible. Sometimes if you get a single image like this, you're kind of stuck with whatever resolution they gave you. But in any case, the very first thing I do is I do not use this map. I will go in here and I break this out into little pieces. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. So first thing I did is I ripped out these sections of the map. This is where the serrations on the tire will go. Now that dictates on the manufacturer of the tire and where those go. But for this demo, this is the area that we're going to put serrations in. So the first thing is, this is the alpha map that I'll be using. And then I've created a bump map for that. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Once I have that done, I am going to pull the letters that go inside the serrations. So that's my next map here, which is the lettering. So if I go back to this one, that's going to be these letters here. And after that, I will make a bump map for the lettering. So either it's raised or recessed into the tire, depending on the design. After that, I make a map for the main lettering of the tire, Goodyear, Bridgestone, whatever they may be. And then I also make a bump map of that. And all my maps are really just black and white. One trick I do with my bump maps is, so I will create my outline lettering for the bump. And then what I like to do is go into Gaussian blur and just add a slight blur to that. And what that does, it gives you a nice ramp on the sides of that lettering. So when you apply the bump, you get some nice, you get a better bump out of the map than if I would have just left it all white. So that's a little trick that I do that seems to work very well. Once I have all that created and saved, I usually save them as PNGs. If you save them as JPEGs, that also will work, but you'll get some artifacting just due to compression purposes. So I save all my maps in PNG when possible, or when I remember, of course. So now we're going to go into KeyShot here, and I'm going to switch over to a tire that has not been done yet. I have everything saved in different studios, so we'll just pretend this is the tire that we're doing, and we've just imported it into KeyShot. The very first thing I'll do with the tire is I'm going to look to see if it's separated. You will see here that when I select on it, the whole tire is one big file, or one big model. So what I like to do is actually separate this tire up a little bit so I have control over the sidewall, over the tread, and over the ridges inside. So how we do that in KeyShot is we just right click on the part, and I'm going to separate by surfaces. Sometimes you can separate by model. It all depends on the how the designer put the file together, if he kept the shells or not when he saved it. So as we're waiting for this, sometimes this happens very quickly, sometimes it takes a minute. It all depends on the size of poly count inside your model. And all I have, I usually start off with just a basic plastic material on the tire, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so this window pops up, and I'm going to select on the tire, on this face, or the sidewall. So this is actually grabbing more than what I want. All I want is the sidewall itself. I want it separated from this tread. So I'm at 45-degree angle. I'm going to go down to 10. And you see that just moved everything. That's the sidewall. That's the piece I want. So I'm going to hit split. And now that has split from the model. And then what I do is I go inside here and I select these ridges, because this is what gives you depth in your tire. If you're able to keep these a little bit darker than the rest, that helps. I'm going to split that, and now you'll see those are a separate piece of geometry now. And then I will also go inside here sometimes and pull these ridges or these valleys out too. I'm not going to do that today, but that is another step I will do most of the time. I'm going to hit apply. And now I have my tire separated. So let's get right into this sidewall. I am going to apply just a basic plastic. Let's see here. There we go. Hard plastic rough. I'm just going to drop that right on there. Okay. I'm going to double click on this plastic, and I am going to go into the material graph. This is going to be a layered material. So the first thing I would do here is I'm going to add a little bit of bump to the tire. There's always some type of bump to almost all materials, except, yeah, almost every material. So I'm just going to do a texture. I'm going to apply that to the bump here. If you hit C on your keyboard, you can see what the bump is on the part. And now I will scale it down a little bit, increase the magnitude, hit C, and I'm just looking for just a little bit of bump going on in there. It just helps with realism. Okay, once I have that done, what I'm going to do is make another plastic material. I will just copy this plastic. If you just right click on that plastic material and hit duplicate, it will duplicate that. And I'm going to apply it as a label on top. What I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to make this a different color because I want everyone to see what's happening here. So right now we have a layer on top of your original material, and I'm going to put an opacity map on this because what I'm going to be pulling out here is the serrations of the tire. So I'm going to double click in there, go to my opacity, and I will go into my sidewalls. Here we go. I've already made a bump out of it. So we got, here we go, serration alpha. I'm gonna hit apply. And right now it's not UV mapped. This tire is not UV mapped. It's always nice to have UV mapped tires, but if you don't, that's okay. We can still get to the destination we need. I'm gonna switch this to a planar map. And then I'm also gonna switch from model to part. Now when I hit move texture, I'm going to use the X. And as you can see here, now this is being projected squarely on that sidewall. And now it's just a matter of sizing it to the tire itself. I'm gonna go to 71. And we're gonna call that done. So that one is done for right now. And now we're going to duplicate this material once again. I'm going to do duplicate. And I'm going to connect it to a label there. So now we have label number 2. I'm going to make this a different color. I'll make this green. And then now we're going to change this map to the lettering. So we want the serration lettering. There we go. That's planar. Might have to flip. Tell you what, we're gonna reset. Go to X. Ha! Thought they would go right in. We'll just rotate that around, I guess. Go to 71. I just have a, I'm probably having a brain fart here, and then I'll remember what I'm supposed to do here in just a minute. All right, go to 71. All right, so there's that. We are going to copy this again. Apply it as a label. And then this one is going to have the main lettering alpha. There we go. We're going to make that a planar map. Make that part. And we'll just scale that up. I know this isn't going in the right direction, but for explanation purposes. So what we have here right now is basically a layered material where I have full control over each section of the tire sidewall. So we're going to go back to the serrations, and now I'm going to add that bump. Isn't that funny? All right. You know, this isn't working the way I envisioned it. Hold on. I'm gonna go to this tire here. This is what it's supposed to look like when it's all done. I don't know why it's. I don't want to waste time here on this. So let me open up this material graph. So here's the basic material graph. This is your main. We have our isn't that interesting? There we go. Jeez, I had the wrong material graph up. Okay, sorry. So what we have here is, I'm going to make this a different color. You can see this is the serrations. So what's important here is we're able to have all these materials on top of each other. If we just applied one material with just a bump map, you can't control these different aspects of the tire. So now if I take the serration area, and let's say I want to make it duller, I can change the specular color, and now I'm making the tire a little bit darker in that area. And usually serrations show a little bit more shine, so I can also make this have the roughness is less, so you can see more of a shine on there. Same with the tire main wording. If we, where am I at? It does get a little confusing when you start having all these maps going. Oh, that's my dirty map. I'll show you that in a second. So now if you had white lettering, you can make that white and still everything else is black. So you have a lot of flexibility when you set up your tires in this fashion. The last thing I usually do is add some dirt to the tire. And I have a map that's just called dirt wipes. And again, that's your very last label that you apply. So if I apply that right now as a label, I zoom in here, you can start seeing, as this reses up, you can see a little bit of dirt marks. Yes, if you're zoomed in very far, close like we are now, there's more work to be done, but for a shot from a distance, just adding a little bit of the dirt to the tire helps with the realism. And then the same thing applies for this tread. So why do I have the tread differently? You see a lot of on a lot of photos, the tread are usually a lot lighter than the sidewall. So now that we have this separated, I also have the tire as a color, and then I also put a dirt on top of it. So if I make this dirt even brighter, we'll make it red, you can see that we can mess around with the colors and make that match into the ground colors that your car is sitting in. I also like to do is, I'm going to turn that off for a minute, is I don't do a straight color when it comes to the tire material itself. Like this is pure black. What I like to do is add a texture to that, and I usually use the Camouflage, and I'm going to attach it to the diffuse. So as you can see here, if you look at a tire, it's not totally pure black. I mean, there's wear marks. There's some of the tire is a little bit duller in areas because of wear and tear. So I do this, and when I go into this Camouflage, I keep it as green, and then I go through here and I work on distortion, and I add some spray to it, and then from this point, I do a little mix. I'll go in here and I will make everything, we'll say that number 1 is going to be 5% black. Color number 2, we'll say is 10% black. And then color number 3, we'll say is 15% black. And let's get rid of the color here. Or I also do dark browns. But as this reses up, you can see that the tire now is not all perfectly black. There is some slight color variations. And you don't want these to be drastic from one another. You just want subtle changes in tones on the tire. And that, again, that helps with some realism. It's not perfectly all one color and perfectly smooth. And then once you add the dirt layer on top of it, that just really sets everything into place into the scene. So that's a basic tire. Again, this is, I might have went quick through this, but it's really just you working at it. And if you have these basics of how to layer to create a material, then you have full control over your model. So that's what I want everyone to get out of this demo is not so much, there's no secret formula. It's still the person behind the computer that's doing all the little tweaking of the colors and light and specular that really makes the tire pop. But don't be scared to make this material graph grow and grow. The more layers you put on, the dirtier it gets. It all depends on the look that you're looking for. So that's thing number one. And of course, if I've gone too fast and you have any more questions, you can get my email off our website and email me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions and help you out there too. Another thing that's important for cars is metal, right? And a lot of times I get a lot of questions on what do I do about chrome. So I make my own chrome. I don't use the chrome out of KeyShot. Just because I want control over everything. I'm just a control freak, I guess, but I want to be able to control every aspect of the material. And with the chrome that's in there, I can't really control too much of it. So I create my own. So right now, what we have here, to create a chrome from scratch, I use metallic paint. And then from that metallic paint, you will take the metal coverage and put that at 1. And then you're going to take the metal roughness and you're going to put that at 0. Clear coat is at 0. Reflection is at 1.5. And your clear coat thickness is at 1. So this, it has the reflective properties of chrome. But the nice thing about this is I can control everything about it. So let's say I'm in a shot and the wheel's kind of blown out and I just want to add a little bit of darkness to it. If I go into this chrome and I just add a little bit of roughness, and then I'm able to play around with some of these colors here, I can work on making that chrome just a pinch darker. So something like that. So it's subtle, but now I do have tones in this white area of the reflection. So if I had to in post, I have pixels there that I can manipulate inside Photoshop to enhance this area even more. If I use the straight chrome from out of KeyShot, you lose that capability of adjusting these little fine details. And then from here, I can make any metal material from here. So if I go into the clear coat and I add just a little bit of warmth to it, we can start going into a gold wheel or just an off nickel type material. And then if, let's say this is one of those, it's like a painted type surface, I just got to go in here now and I can adjust my metal roughness. You can adjust your thickness. That changes the look. And it's just a matter of playing with these sliders to get the look that you want. And all my metal is created this way. I have a whole library of, chrome, black chrome, yet nickel color type, reflection like that. We have the dull wheels, the shiny wheels, painted wheels. And so I'm able just to go into my library and just slide things over and already have the material created. But even at that, once you put the dome on, you might have to do some adjustments to the material. But everything's done with the metallic shader for your metal. And then, of course, you can go into the material graph and you can add scratches, things of that nature to enhance the how real do you want everything to look. So that's kind of like on that's kind of it on the metal. Another thing I want to talk about is paint. And this is a large topic. How do you create paint and make it the most accurate? And again, it's playing around. I use, again, metallic paint, no matter if I'm doing a flat paint, if I'm doing a pearl paint, a metallic paint. It all can be done with the metallic paint shader. So if I want more of a flat paint, without any metallic in it, all I have to do is take your metal coverage and put that at 0, and take your roughness metal and put that at 0, and now this is a flat material, a flat paint. Not flat paint, but I'm trying to think of the right word here. it's not a metallic paint. Now, if I want to add metallic to this, I'm going to increase my metal coverage. And what does metal coverage affect? It affects the metal color. So let me make this color red. All right, I am just having a hard time today for some reason. There we go. All right. There we go. Jeez, pizzas. Okay, metal coverage. What that is the metal color channel, and then your metal roughness. So right now this is really shiny. I'm going to add a little bit of roughness to that, and you'll see that the light spreads across the paint a little bit more. So depending on how rough you have this will determine, you know, how much spread this color has on your paint. So you can definitely change your paint through here, but there's always more than one way to skin a cat. A lot of times what I like to do is I am going to make this red, and I will make this red. I'm going to go into the material graph here, and I'm going to add a color gradient. Let me show you what this does. I'm going to attach that to the base color. No, I'm going to attach it to, sorry, the clear coat color. Let me turn this back to gray. Okay. With this clear coat color right now, it's at white and black. And what does this mean? The most important thing when you apply this for when you're doing car paint is you want view direction. And what that means is if I make this white a red, and I make this color white, whatever is directly pointing at the camera will be the red color, and then as the parts move away from the camera, it slowly goes into the white. So as I rotate this, you can see that the paint is changing colors. So when it's at the camera, it's white, and as it goes away from the camera, it turns red. Why is that? Or when it's going away from the camera, it's turning white. At the camera, it's red. Why do I do that? That adds a lot of depth to your paint. So let me turn this into red. And I'm going to make this red darker. So you can see now that we have a nice rich red, and it goes to dark and back to red because we're doing like a metallic paint. If I turn this off, actually, we should probably do another material. Let me duplicate this and do it 2 ways. This one here, I am going to make this red darker, that red brighter. Okay. So here is the paint, doing it with using these two up here, the body color and the metal color, which looks good. But when I attach this type of gradient to the clear coat color, you actually get a lot more depth out of your paint. And then you still can control how metallic-y do you want it. So as I increase the metal roughness and leave the metal coverage alone, this is getting to be more of a plain red. And if I decrease the roughness, metal roughness, you start getting more of the metallic color. So definitely when you're playing and creating paint materials, you know, make your color through your clear coat, and then try it through your base color and your metal color and see what the differences are. Another thing is don't be afraid of is, I'm going to get rid of this because it makes my tree really big. All right, so let me get rid of this for a minute. So let's make this, we'll go red again, and we'll make this, we'll make that yellow just for funsies. And now we're gonna make the clear coats, like the blue. So now, even though this makes totally no sense right now, you get a really cool color. As you know, depending on how you're looking at it, it changes color. So that's a fun way of playing with paint. And then you can just kind of go through here and you can slide to make different colors too. So again, and just play around with that and play around with this color gradient. That's always fun, and you'll get more depth out of your paints. Let's talk about clear coat roughness. Now everyone loves the orange peel. I just want to say with orange peel, it's one of those things that you don't want to see unless you're super close up. So if you are doing an image that the camera's far away from the camera, and you crank up that orange peel so you see it, it's really too much. The only time you would really see the orange peel is if you had a close-up shot of the paint, and that will also determine on how heavy you have this. And if I'm doing orange peel, this is going to be a very subtle bump on that. I don't usually use orange peel very often, just so you know. And another thing when it comes to flake, flake is another funny thing. If I go into my roughness here, what you want to do with your flake is I usually crank it up to 1 and then increase the flake size. And again, if you're further away from the camera, you're not going to really see the flake. The only time you'll see flake, if you see it at all, would be in the brighter areas of the paint. Now, if you get zoomed in, you obviously, this is like too much flake, at least for cars. I mean, if you're doing a bass boat, this is probably perfect. But for cars, if you zoom in, now you're going to probably have to adjust your flake size and the visibility of it. So you just want to tone that down and tone down your flake. What's important here is, you know, don't be afraid to crank up the flake size, because that's where you're going to start seeing the flake come out. And when it comes to paint on cars, at least, as this paint goes into shadow or in the darker areas, you shouldn't really see the flake. The flake should be only concentrated in the brighter tones of the paint. And if you want to see the flake a little bit more, you just want to increase the flake visibility. The highest you can go is 1. So I just crank it to 1 and then slowly move it back. In small little increments is key. And what I usually do if I'm doing a close-up shot and I want to see some flake, to really understand what's happening here, I will do a region, and I will just let that res up and see if I can still see the flake. Or I do a little test renders and see what the render looks like with the flake. Because sometimes when you render it, this does smooth out a little bit too much, so you'll have to do some adjustments. But that's just some quick ways of seeing what's happening with your material, with the flake, along with your bump. Okay, so that is that. I kind of want to touch base a little bit on the HDR. So let's just say we are going to be doing this car. And we're going to do a studio. Now, studio scenes are, it varies from client to client, and it's a subjective look. So you really just need to listen to your client on what they're looking for. But for our purposes, what I'm going to do here is what I usually do straight up is I'm going to go to my library, and what I like to do is add a environment type of dome. So I will go to come on. Hope I didn't lock up. There we go. So what I do here, the reason why I do this is I wanted some foreign color. I love foreign color. I know a lot of times when you do studios, they take all the foreign color out and it's just about the lighting, and that's fine too, but I usually start off this way because I can always go to a more sterile look. But I will put a dome on here and then go to the HDR editor, and I will increase the blur to 5. And this, so there we go. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking for a lighting that's going to give me shape to my my sheet metal, and that's all I'm doing here. So this is I want my light source on this side of the vehicle, so it's nice and bright here. It fades out. We have a little bit of bright light going over here, and now inside here, inside your editor, I can take some of the color out of it, so it's more of a subtle color. And once I'm happy with that, that's when I'll start adding lights to get all that rich reflections back. So one of my favorite ones to use is the gradation light. You click on it here. I will go to a rectangle, and I'm going to cut that in half. And what I do is put a nice little horizon line across the shoulder of this car. So right now you can see that this gradation is going from left to right. I want it to go from bottom to top. So I'm going to go down to angle. I'm going to type in -90. And if I turn off my half, you can see now that my gradation is going from bottom to top. And now I want where this cuts off at is I want this to be really hot. So I am going to take this and slide it up, and I'm going to cut it in half. And now you can see that there's more blue in this area. So I keep it in these colors because now what I'm going to do now is place the light. I want it into this side of the vehicle. If you click on this button here on the HDR editor and then click onto your part, it will place that light on the dome. So as I move my cursor around on the car, it's moving my light in the HDR editor. So I'm going to go back to here and say, yep, that's what I want. And now I'm going to go in and change the colors. So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to make this white. And then this red, I am just going to make it a darker color. Because on this editor or on this particular light, you can control the opacity of the light. And then you can control the colors of the light. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this white and I'm going to make the brightness even brighter. So now I have a nice hot light going across here, and then it wraps around. Now you can go inside here and play with the size, how long you want it, how far up it goes. If I want to rotate this around, I usually use the azimuth of the light. So now you can rotate this around. And you're just going to move it to the area you want, which that's the area I wanted. Okay, so now that we have that, I want another light right here because I want to pull out this highlight of the vehicle. And now again, I'm just going to copy this light, just do a duplicate. I have this selected, and now I'm going to click in this area of the vehicle. And now it moved that light on the dome, so it's affecting this area. Now sometimes this light might be too big and it's affecting other things. So that's when you would just go in and you could control the width of the light and how high it goes up. But I just want to get a little little liquid edge right over here. Another thing to do with the HDR editor, I want to make this darker on this side. So I'm just going to add another light, and I'm going to turn this into an alpha, and then I'm going to take all the color out of that alpha. When you do that, it turns into a black light. We'll call it black light, or it just takes out all the lighting information in the dome. So now I'm going to move that light into this area. And these are just some nice ways to get that dark and light next to each other, to play off each other. Key with lighting is you have a light, then you have a dark, and then you have a light, and then you have a dark, and that's what helps make the image pop. So if I turn off this light now, the car looks a little flat and muddy. You add a little bit of darkness in there. Now you're starting to get some shape and depth out of the paint. And again, now that you have that down, you can add another light on top of that. Duplicate that. Move that above the black light. And now I can move a light on top of it, so I can add a little bit of light to these dark areas if you needed to pull out shape in that area. And of course, another key thing when lighting a vehicle is you don't want all your lights to be the same intensity. So I'm going to go over here, and we are going to make the whole light darker. Because you want to be able to, you still want your eye, the goal when lighting a vehicle is you want the spectator's eye to move around the vehicle. If the car was lit with the same intensity light around the whole vehicle will look flat, and the eye won't know what to do. But if you have, this is my hot spot, let's just say this, for this particular shot, this is my hot spot. I want this to be the brightest, and then I want this to be bright, but not as bright. So my eye is going around the whole vehicle, and you create depth and shape out of your lighting. And again, this is a lot of playing around with these lights. Use this editor. You can create some amazing lighting with it. That's for studio. And then you can always go back to this background, even though I put this environment here. If I go to gradient, now we're into a solid, just black and white type environment, and we can do a gradation over here. And now you're starting to get to that other type of studio lighting where it's just black and white and grays, and you start adding. So you can go back and forth with some color, without color, and just play around. And then one more thing, I know we're running short on time here, is backplates. Real quick here, I have a dome and a backplate combined in here, and a lot of times it's like, how do I get the angle? I love personally using the backplate match. So I'm going to do that and show you how I go about doing that. I'm going to turn the model off because it gets in my way sometimes. If I go to camera, match backplate, I usually do 2-point perspective, but of course you can do 3-point. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to find lines to put these X and Z lines on. And this is going to help me get the focal length that I need for this particular camera. I try to stay away when I can, away from the ground when doing these, because even though we do have lines, I don't know how this ground was laid. So if these were done at a diagonal, those lines would be off, and you won't get the right camera. So I try to find solid objects inside the backplate that I know are true. And luckily, if these buildings are, they should be true true rectangles and squares. Otherwise, the building would fall. But anyways, so this is the first thing I do. And now I'm going to turn my car back on and my ground. So it looks like we are at about a 25 focal length. If I go to my library and look at this particular backplate, which is this one, it says my focal length is 22. So I'm off by a few degrees, but that's okay. I mean, this is really close enough. So now, how do I place this car in the scene without ruining the camera? So the first thing I'm going to do is what type of shot do I want for this? So we're just going to do a front 3/4. We'll say like this. But I want this car pushed back into the scene. Before I set my camera and before I say okay over here, I go to absolute, and now I'm going to move this vehicle into the scene. So under my X, it's at -300 some. I'll go -400. And now that's pushing my car back into the scene. And then if I go to my Z, we'll say -200. Wrong way, -400. 500. So that's pushed in the scene. The car looks a little bit small. That's where I go to my Y, and I'm just going to move this car up a little bit. So let's see what 80 does. Let's just say that's the angle I want. So what's important here is I'm moving this car after I set my perspective for my angle. I don't go in here. Let me save this real quick. I'm going to hit OK and hit save. What's important here, all right, cool. Let me go back into this. Once I set these lines down, I'm not going in here and moving the car this way, trying to get it front and back. How I'm moving the car is through my absolute, because I want to be able to keep my perspective. So as this car gets closer to the camera, that's when you're going to get this, this weird look to the vehicle. But as this car is being pushed into the scene, that's when the car should start flattening out and make it look fit into the scene that you want. So that's really important when using the backplate match. Is you get the angle first, and then move your car in your scene through position. I know I went over a lot of stuff today, and it's already almost an hour, and we should probably have some questions and answers. So I think I'm done for now, and I'm ready for any questions if anybody has anything.
Yeah, we do. Wonderful, Tim. Thank you so much. For a reminder for folks that came potentially a little late, Tim is at KeyShot Studios, so they do a number of work with automotive firms and people on a consulting basis. So great stuff from Tim. Obviously, you can see kind of knows the stuff backwards and forwards. So thank you for coming and kind of lending your expertise for us today, Tim. So I'll jump into the questions. I think this was on the earlier model, maybe that model, how you applied the black paint section on the hood. So how you kind of got the, I guess they're asking kind of how you maybe either broke out that section or how you kept the black paint on the hood separate from the other paints.
So yeah, this particular model, this is already separated, but we can obviously do this still even if it was attached. And you're going to attack it the same way as how I showed how we did the tires. I would lay down the red paint first, and get that paint the way you want it, and then I would put down another paint and apply that as a label, and then I would have an opacity map to the shape that I want on the car. Does that make sense?
Totally, yeah. And you obviously talked a lot about kind of the different environments and how you dial it in. One person's asking, obviously as you sort of change the environment, you'll get different effects with the paints. Do you kind of have a particular environment that you start with? That's sort of this is my environment that I'm going to dial my paints in on that I know will give me kind of consistent results in other environments?
No, that's a really good question. What I usually do is I do everything in the basic studio that comes when a KeyShot launches. Believe it or not, that is, even though everything's soft, that is a very good dome for lighting purposes, for darks and brights, darks and lights. So I'll do all my materials there, and then I'll apply whatever dome, or if I have to create a dome, and that's when I start creating my domes. Now, of course, when I'm creating the dome, that doesn't mean I'm not going to go back to that material and do little tweaks here and there, but that is a good start.
Great. And then in terms of the models that you're working from, both the tire models and the car models, obviously KeyShot imports a ton of different file formats, over 30 different kind of CAD and DCC file formats. What do you usually get from the manufacturers? Is it usually SolidWorks, or it's just kind of all over the place depending on the part and the manufacturer?
So usually, most cases, the manufacturer, obviously, they do their cars in CAD, right? CATIA or SolidWorks, wherever that may be. But then they will convert it to poly. And then usually they have, they call data preppers, and they will prep the model inside Maya or 3ds Max or whatever their workflow is, and then saved out. And then those are the models we get. So it's usually a Maya file. But trust me, I've done cars that are step files too. But a lot of times, the reason why they actually go through that extra step is because the interiors of the cars, that's all soft modeling. That can't be done through CAD. I mean, they have CAD models of it, but it's very hard, stiff, because they just want the shape. So they usually have a modeler go in and model all the soft parts. So it would be your seats, your steering wheel, your armrest, center console, where the leather's at. So that's usually all modeled in a 3D program like Max or Maya, and then import it in.
And then do you usually pull out all the interiors to kind of make the file more lightweight when working with it?
Back in KeyShot 1 I did, but I don't remove anything anymore.
Okay.
Just to give you a little idea, one vehicle with all kinds of trims and stuff, you're looking at 10K or a 20 gig or 10 gig file, KeyShot file, and KeyShot runs buttery smooth.
Great. One question people had is on actual automotive light material, so headlights, tail lights, accent lights, and how you approach those.
Okay, that's a good question. So once I get my base lighting down, let me just go to here. So now that, we'll just say this is the lighting that I wanted. What I will do next is I will add a IES light. Do we have time? Can I just do it real quick? Okay, so I'm gonna add an IES light. And with these IES lights, I am only using them to enhance the image, not light the image. I can't stress that enough. Again, these are just the subtleties that help with the image. So I usually put a sphere in there. Let me go to my library, go to materials, go to lights. I go to my go-to light that I usually use almost on everything when I use an IES light. No. And then let me just turn this up a little bit so we can all see what's happening. And we'll go back to my angle. So with this IES light, I am only going to be using it to pull out subtleties of the car, the shape. So if I turn this light off, it looks nice, but it's still, you don't quite know what's happening in here. How does this sheet metal bend and turn and get to the wheel well? And how does it go down in here? You're kind of missing this little crater where the light sits in. So if you add a little IES light, that helps pull out these little surfaces and changes of the sheet metal. And obviously this would be more of a white light, or it all depends on my scene. And I might move that up higher so it spreads out more. But these lights are just put in there just for little accents to pull out shape, more shape.
Yeah, you can really see it in the headlight. And so if you wanted to actually, make the headlights themselves kind of have brightness, like, to mimic the headlight being on or turn, or, the rear tail.
Okay. I got you.
How would someone do that?
Yep, got it. So what I'm going to do, again, it's the same idea, but this time I am going to be using this light for purposes of lighting. Turn that down. I would make spheres. And then I would move that down, and that's what's going to be reflecting onto the ground. And the only thing I'm doing inside this light is I want to mimic that the light is on. So I will put a bulb or a sphere inside the glass, turn that on, me hit OK here. Hide. Oop. All right. Darn it. Hide part. Just for explanation purposes, I'm going to turn this glass into a area light. Now this area light, again, depending on how it's reflecting and refracting, I'll either have it on really strong, or I might have it just at 10, because I just want to simulate that the lights are on. What's giving the light the look is this light hitting the ground. Now, to add a little bit more realism to it, you can add a scatter medium, put a square, a block in here, add a scatter medium, and play with the density, and that will start showing some of the beam. But I usually do that in post, to be quite honest with you, just due to, not that KeyShot can't do it, because it can. It's just that it's faster for me to do it in post than wait for the render. Time is very important to us. So even though it can be done in a program, sometimes we'll do it in another application just because it's quicker, time management type of thing.
Great. And so a couple of questions about that scene is what's the black background you're using in that studio shot? And then also, how are you managing the plane under the car? Is there a special material you're using to kind of get those reflections?
Okay. So the material is the ground material. That has nothing, I didn't do anything to that, except when the ground comes in, it's going to be pure black, and it will be zero reflection. So it looks like nothing happened when you apply a ground plane. What I will usually do, if I don't have squish on the tires, this is a cheat. If you turn clipping plane on, and let's move this ground plane up, you can actually, cut the car. So we'll usually put a ground plane in there, and then we cut a little bit of the tire just to show that there's weight to the car. If it's not modeled in there, we usually don't like tires modeled with squish, just because if you want to do animation, then you would have a flat thing moving around and around. Of course, that's not what you want. So you can cheat that by using a ground plane. Now, how do I get reflections on that ground plane? I am going to go to the ground material. I'm going to make this white. And now you can see that there's a reflection now because it's the specular is a color now. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of roughness to it, and that will determine how much fall off I have on the reflection. And then you also can mess around with the contrast. And that usually helps when you have lighter backgrounds and this kind of fades away. So let me switch that over to a lighter background. Okay. So if I go back to the default, you don't really see a reflection because you're on, a white background. But if you add just a little contrast to it, let that res up, you can start seeing the car come into light. So that's when I would use the contrast, depending on your color background. Also, don't be afraid to use the coves, because you can bounce light off the coves, and that gives you nice effects of light going around the car and also bounce light into the car and be a collusion type of stuff.
It's great. One person was asking just if you very quickly sort of show how you get that black light again, sort of how you got that kind of darker contrast light set up over on the left-hand side.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So all that is, go back to the map. Under your HDR editor, I created a light. Where is it? I gotta find it first. There we go. Okay. Let me just turn that off. I'm gonna start from scratch. So I'm going to add a light, and right now that light is set to add. So it's throwing light into the scene. What I'm gonna do is turn that into an alpha. Right now, the alpha it made no difference because the alpha is at pure white, so it's showing 100% light. If I make the brightness of that light to 0, it turns it into black, or it takes out all light. Now I'm going to click on this area to move the light, because I can move it by clicking. And then you just move that into a position that you like, and that's subtracting light away from the dome to give you these hard and light type scenarios. It also can be done with the other the gradation light. So again, we can use this light. This is kind of neat because since this light has a opacity to it, meaning that the top of the light is pure, there's no light at all, and at the bottom it's pure. If I turn this into a alpha and get rid of all light, now you can see that this particular alpha, it's black here, and it does have a nice gradation because there's no pixels in here, so you do have light showing through. So you can get some nice effects that way too, especially if you cut the light in half, and then, you know, you can mess around with the rotate. And that's, you know, these are the small, fine details. What makes lighting is these small enhancements and changing. And there's no easy explanation of how to do it, except you just need to do it. And after you do it over and over again, you get it into a rhythm and you have your own process. It's easier for me to tell you what these lights do, but it's hard to tell me where to put them. There's no easy answer to that.
Well, and I love what you talked about with the idea of, like, you know, moving the eye, right, and kind of, understanding what you're trying to achieve with the image as you're doing it.
Yes.
And kind of where you want your highlights to be, and kind of artistically where you want the user to kind of move their eye around. So some people are asking about kind of general lighting sessions. So if you go on our YouTube page, there are, we recently had our virtual KeyShot World. There were 2 sessions, one on kind of lighting basics and one on lighting advanced. If you really want to Tim's point, understand more about the tools themselves and environment lighting and HDR lighting, I recommend strongly that you check out those YouTube videos to really get a full understanding of lighting. And then I think when you come back and sort of see, you know, how an expert like Tim does it, you can kind of understand how he uses all those tools to, as he says, kind of, you know, get that look that he's trying to achieve through, you know, expertise, but also trial and error and an artist's eye.
Yep.
One question folks were asking is, so you have this set up, now you want to do it, say, an XR render. How does something like that change your lighting in terms of, you know, simplifying things for something like an XR?
Okay, so again, that's a really good question. There's 2 ways of handling that. One way is very difficult. The other way is a little bit easier. If I'm going to do an XR and I want this thing to be spinning around, I will actually do the spin. You can do the XR where the dome stays stationary, but the part moves. So I will light it for that angle. So this is the angle, right? So you can control the XR by telling it to either have the dome rotate with it or have it stationary. If you have the dome rotate with your scene, when you, let me apply this. So as you can see, the lighting's changing, right? It's brighter on this side, and then as you get to this side, it gets dark. And I think that's where a lot of the questions come in. How do I fix that? If we're doing a 360 and the environment is spinning with it, we have to light the car. So even on this side, we have to manipulate the HDR to bring out some of these highlights of the car. If it's a XR and it's a studio type lighting, there's no environment rotating with it, you know, you see buildings moving with it, then we would do a stationary lighting, meaning we will light this vehicle just like you do in photography on products, a 3-point lighting system, let's just say. And now the part or the car will move, but the lighting stays. So that lighting is consistent throughout the whole spin. So there's a couple different ways of attacking that. If you do it with the HDR, again, there's a lot of work to do with your lighting. And what's really hard to get to explain to the clients is not every frame of the XR is going to be perfect. And then explain to them that people aren't viewing it as, here's a frame, here's a frame, here's a frame. They're actually viewing it, moving it around, so that the lighting, even though it doesn't look perfect at this angle, it's okay because the car is in motion. That's very hard to get that point across, because a lot of times they're like, well, this frame, I don't like the lighting over here. And then you got to go in there and you try to fix the lighting. There's a lot of education, and there is a little bit of work there.
Great. And so kind of we're over time here. So I'll go to one last question for you to wrap up. So one person's asking, I think you kind of touched this a bit, but kind of deciding how much you do in KeyShot versus what you kind of save for post. Is there kind of any sort of, hard and fast rule where certain things, like the light beam of the headlights, you'll focus more on post, or is it really just on a kind of per asset, per job basis?
It's another good question. So in my younger years, when I first started in CG, I did a lot of fixing in post. I do not do that anymore. The software has come such a long way that I can get a scene 95 to 98% done. So in post, all I'm doing is enhancing the image. So I will try to do everything I can to get it in the render. The reason for that is the industry right now is everyone needs everything very quickly. So if I do a product or a vehicle, because we do a lot of product stuff too, and I get that almost 100% with the render, if the client comes back to me 6 months from now, I know all I have to do is open up that scene, switch out whatever part's been updated, I can hit render, and I can get that project back out to the client very quickly. If I did a lot of post work, now I have to pull out my old PSDs, and then I got to try to remember everything I did to fix all the issues that I had in my lighting or my materials. So the answer is I do as little post as possible. Lights I will always add to enhance them, or add a little bit of smoke to areas just so you can tell that there's a light on. But for the most part, it's done in KeyShot.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah. One final softball question for you. Are you using the GPU rendering in KeyShot 9? And what do you think of it?
No. I use CPU. That's where all my horsepower is at on on our machines. I have a nice graphics card. For me, I still like the look of a CPU. It's reliable. It's always there. It works every time. GPU, while you get great results, it gets a little finicky at times, and I just don't have time to be playing with updating drivers and stuff. But so yeah, to answer your question, this type of work is all CPU. Obviously, if we get into when we do XR and VR stuff, we're all GPU. But wherever I can, I use CPU.
Great. Well, and that's why KeyShot's great, because you have your choice either way.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. As we mentioned, everyone, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is on there. All of our great content is on there. If you want to learn more about KeyShot, either in terms of a feature basis, like things like lighting, or on a more industry basis, like Tim is showing about, the specifics of how to get great automotive renderers, cannot recommend enough to join our channel. I want to thank Tim again from KeyShot Studios. If you need any assistance, if you're someone out there who needs additional help setting assets up or outsourcing renders, as you can see, Tim truly is a KeyShot ninja. So please check out KeyShotStudios.com for further information. We thank all of you for joining, especially Tim, and we will see you again next month.
Thank you.